Pedro Neto is attracting interest from multiple suitors, including AC Milan and Enzo Maresca's Man City, because all of our players are attracting interest from Enzo Maresca's Man City. Somehow Benoit Badiashile is very close in getting a move to Napoli to play in the Champions League. Multiple clubs from the Premier League have already inquired about the availability of Mykhailo Mudryk. Argentinian midfielder Valentin Barco has been announced for Chelsea, but does that necessarily mean he's going to be playing for us next season? And Kieran Gill tells us that the sporting directors in the hierarchy absolutely love working with Xabi Alonso and admire his enthusiasm. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And still no news on the Pep Chavadia front, although I do expect to hear that soon, so I'm probably going to be doing another video later. But even without that, there's a lot to get into, so let's have a look at what's going on in the world of Chelsea today. Transfer News Live posted this via The Sun. Manchester City are preparing a move for Pedro Neto. Enzo Maresca is keen to reunite with the Chelsea winger, with City now exploring a deal. Chelsea value Neto at around £70 million and are under no pressure to sell, although a significant offer could force a rethink. Neto is also attracting interest from AC Milan, but is open to a move to the Etihad. So look, we'll do the AC Milan thing first and then we'll talk about the City thing. So AC Milan are probably not going to buy Pedro Neto, are they? Let's be honest. Let's look at the deals and the conversations that we've been having with Italian clubs throughout this window. Roma didn't want to pay enough for Garnacho. We are looking at Benoit Badiashile to Napoli, but we'll get into that in a minute. Como have been haggling to the nth degree with us for Trevor Chalobah, and if we want £70 million for Pedro Neto, even AC Milan, I just don't see him coming in and spending the money, right? So look, that one I'm not particularly enamoured about in terms of it being like I mean, this is from The Sun as well, so do you know what I mean? It's like we take it all with a pinch of salt. But even if AC Milan were interested in Pedro Neto, I see them coming in and being like, how do you feel about 40 mil? You know, and you know, maybe there's something to be done with Rafa Leao, but supposedly he's on his way to Turkey. But either way, I just don't really see it happening. The Man City thing, I think, just makes for an interesting case study, because this is now the third player who's been realistically linked with Man City from us this season. The first one being Enzo Fernandez, of course, but 120 mil. You know, they've got Champions League next season at the moment, so it seems, but based on what happens with the 115, which is kind of pertinent for all of these players, you don't necessarily know that's going to be the case going forward. Malagusto makes a lot of sense, but we want a huge amount of money for him, and look, we wouldn't be disappointed to keep Malagusto in the squad, but at the same time, it's like, I could see him working well at City under Enzo Maresca again, because obviously Enzo Maresca loves him. But it's a lot of money, so I'm not sure about that one. Pedro Neto, again, another player that did play quite well under Enzo Maresca, because he likes having lots of tactical instruction, right? He likes being told what to do. His work rate's really good. He was one of the players that certainly seemed to not flourish, because he didn't exactly set the world alight, but he was good under Enzo Maresca. First half of last season, pretty good. So, look, the thing is, so Pedro Neto currently is on his way to Hong Kong, if not already there, to hook up with the team. I think there's options about, you know, the thing is, we've got, if you think about him playing as a right winger, we've got options there at the moment already. If he plays on the left, he could play more of that kind of wing-back role if we change from a 4 to a 3 mid-game or something like that. But also, as an attacker, if you compare him to the rest of the right-sided attackers we've got at the moment, the likes of Cole Palmer, the likes of Esteban William, he's definitely more of a workhorse and a little bit less dynamic and a little bit less flary, isn't he? And, you know, especially when you consider that right side is probably going to belong to the likes of Marco Palestra as well. So I think Liverpool is still credited with interest in him as well. There was some talk about Saudi Arabia, although that seems to have gone by the wayside a little bit. It might be one of those things, again, where Xabi Alonso is just like, look, I just want to take a look at this player before we kind of okay the sale. But either way, there are lots of clubs supposedly interested in Pedro Neto. And look, if someone comes in with 70 mil for Pedro Neto, like, that's, yeah, wicked, isn't it? Like, that's obviously something that's been driven by this crazy market this season, because I don't really rate Pedro Neto as a player much higher than what we bought him for. I don't think he's lost value. I don't think he's massively improved his value either. I think he's just been a good servant to the club for the most part. So 70 mil would feel like a really good deal for us. Like, bearing in mind we bought him for 50 to 60, something like that. And with a few years of amortization, we're looking at like 20, 30 mil profit if we can sell Pedro Neto for 70 mil. And very much the same as it is with Malagusto and Enzo Fernandez. Like, if we keep him around, I'm not going to be disappointed. But the squad is starting to get thick, isn't it? The squad is starting to get thick, and he's a saleable asset at the end of the day, and there are lots of clubs that are interested in him. Manchester City, I just think it's, like I say, an interesting case study, and like, obviously they went out and got Elliot Anderson, they got Jeremy Monga, who was pretty cheap, and also, like, you know, these are all young players that we're looking at as well. And, you know, they're potentially interested in Boadi as well, who's another young player. That model makes sense at the moment to me because of the 115, right? So if Man City are slapped with a 40-point deduction and a transfer ban and whatever it's going to be, then it makes sense that they are looking at these kind of high-profile young players who have got time for them to build back into being a Champions League club after they've dealt with their punishment. But players like Enzo Fernandez and Pedro Neto, I think it's a bit of a harder sell. Look, Boadi and Elliot Anderson are not Champions League footballers as of right now. Do you know what I mean? So if they get into the Champions League next season and miss it the season after because of the points deduction, then it just is what it is, isn't it? They'll be like, yeah, cool, we're still part of a big team. You know, Man City is still going to be a force to be reckoned with one way or another. But when it comes to the likes of Enzo Fernandez and Pedro Neto, who will be looking at their situations right now, being like, right, I want to be playing Champions League football now. And they can right now because City are in the Champions League. But if they get the deduction, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, maybe they get kicked out of the Champions League. I don't know. I've got no idea. But it's just a different proposition for older players than it is for the really young ones, right? And 70 mil is a lot of money to drop on a Pedro Neto. 75 is a lot to drop on a Malo Gusto. And 120 is a huge amount to drop on Enzo Fernandez. Now, maybe the Enzo Fernandez thing can happen if they do sell Rodri, because they will be light a midfielder, and obviously they've just got in Elliot Anderson, and Boadi is a defensive midfielder as well, and they've just lost Bernardo Silva. They lost Kevin De Bruyne a little while ago, so there's space for like a number 8, an attacking number 8 in their team as things go. So look, we'll just have to see what happens with the City stuff in general, but I don't think it's a coincidence that City are moving relatively slowly in this transfer window. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sync, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so next up, we're going to talk about centre-backs, specifically Benoit Badiashile. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Tanziloic and L'Equipe. Benoit Badiashile is on the verge of leaving Chelsea. Napoli have made progress on a loan with an option to buy, except that Juventus are also very interested and have not yet given up. Benoit Badiashile can't believe his luck, can he? You have got Napoli and Juventus, two of the biggest teams in Italy, fighting for your signature. But as I was just talking about with, you know, the idea of Pedro Neto going to AC Milan, they're not, you know, coming in to spend money on these players at the end of the day. And look, Benoit Badiashile, what, we want 20 to 30 mil for him? Like, it's not a huge amount of money, but this is just a thing with Italian teams, man. They don't like to get the wallet out and slap money down on the table. Either way, if this is a similar obligation to the likes of what we saw with Alejandro Garnacho at Aston Villa, and it's like make 10 appearances and then, yeah, okay, like, you know, this is a good idea. I don't love the idea of filling up our international loan spots with players that we're trying to get off the books rather than ones that we want to develop, but we are, with centre-backs specifically, we're in this situation now, aren't we, where it's like we've got 10 centre-backs on the books with the addition of Maxence Lacroix. We have to thin that out. We absolutely have to thin that out. Trevor Chalobah looks like he's close to Como. Benoit Badiashile close to Napoli, but it'll be interesting to see what Juventus do, and obviously Axel Disasi has interest from Roma as well as West Ham in the Championship as well. So we are getting closer to the exodus of the unwanted centre-backs at the end of the day. But like I say, man, if you're Benoit Badiashile, you've barely played for the last few months. You've made a handful of good appearances for Chelsea in the last few years, and you've got these massive clubs wanting you. Like, I don't know how Chelsea do it, man. I don't know how Chelsea do it with such good sellers, because when you consider, like, how difficult Man United and Arsenal find it to sell their players, how are we getting stuck with the likes of Benoit Badiashile and two of these big clubs are in for him? Like, I just don't get it, man. I just don't get it. But either way, like, fair play, Benoit Badiashile, if he gets to go and play in the Champions League next season, somehow that's an upgrade from where he's come from, even though you could argue the likes of Badiashile and Disasi have contributed to where we are in the last few years anyway. If he gets to move, I'll be happy, he'll be happy. I think it will just depend on the terms of the agreement in terms of the, you know, because we had the same thing with Garnacho to Roma, right? They wanted to do the loan with the obligation to buy, but we couldn't agree on the clauses for the obligation, basically, and they wanted it to be really quite hard and easy for them to make a decision at some point and be like, actually, we don't think we're up for this player, so we're probably not going to buy him, whereas we're more like, no, we want you to make sure that this obligation is kind of easy to meet, so you do definitely have to buy him. But either way, it is what it is. Hopefully, like I say, the centre-back exodus will begin soon. Right, next up, we're going to talk about Mykhailo Mudryk, and this is fascinating, man, and it kind of echoes what I've been saying about him. So, Chelsea Dodgers posted posted this via Kieran Gill of the Daily Mail. Breaking: Chelsea have received multiple approaches about Mykhailo Mudryk from clubs following the news of his return to football, including 3 from the Premier League. All options are open between Mudryk and Chelsea this summer. So this is kind of what I think not only is the best for Chelsea, but I think it's the best for Mykhailo Mudryk as well. He needs game time, because regardless of the fact that he's been training on his own and he's been keeping as fit as he can without playing against people, he's not played football for 620 however many days it has been since he's been banned. So match fitness is going to be so important, and if he comes into the Chelsea team, alright, okay, cool, he trains with the guys and that, but we've got Morgan Rogers, we've got Giovanni Kendo, we've got Jamie Gittins, who's kind of lighting it up at the moment, do you know what I mean? You don't just thrust Mudryk to the front of that list, in front of a £117 million Morgan Rogers and a Jamie Gittins that's got 4 GA in 4 games in pre-season so far, when he hasn't played football for 2 years, right? So look, supposedly we're going to get into it in a minute, that, the idea is to assess him and then see what happens. But I think a loan from Mykhailo Mudryk into a team that his qualities will shine in is the best thing for him, for everyone, to be completely honest. I did a live stream with Kai from Behind the Dugouts on the Blue Lounge the other day, and Kai mentioned something fascinating, right? The thing with Mykhailo Mudryk is, our issue with Mykhailo Mudryk is decision making and football IQ and stuff like that. But one thing Kai said that is absolutely true is, because he's so quick, if he is still that quick, obviously we yet to see, but I would imagine that he's managed to retain his pace over the last few years. That is gold dust for teams in general, right? It's not, at our level and the level we want to get to, physical attributes like speed and strength and that, they are necessary, but also you need the brain, the footballing IQ, the ability to read the game. But if you're a lower level team, that pace is vital, because it gets you on a counter. Do you know what I mean? And it gives you an opportunity. And not many of the teams toward the bottom of the table are trying to play football like we're playing. So Mykhailo Mudryk, in actual truth, would be a hot property, and I do understand why so many clubs are interested in him at the moment. And I don't think that, both things can be true at the same time. I don't think Mykhailo Mudryk is going to be good enough to get into the Chelsea team going forward, but I can easily see, even without having played for a while just his attributes alone make him an attractive proposition for other clubs. So Chelsea Dodgers also posted this: Chelsea want to see where Mykhailo Mudryk's performance levels are now at, as he has not played competitive football since November 2024. Another option this summer would be to send Mudryk on loan to Strasbourg. That would allow him to stay under Blueco. So this is the one that most people have been talking about that seems to make the most sense. You send him to Strasbourg and we get to keep the same kind of eye on him, do you know what I mean? And I don't like to use the word, but control in terms of where he's at. Is he getting enough minutes, this, that and the other? It gives Blueco, and at the end of the day, he is a valuable asset, one way or the other. So there's been some news to say that potentially Mykhailo Mudryk's entire value was written off when we announced that massive loss, the 300 mil loss. So there's a potential here that is a pure profit asset. But either way, they did invest a lot in him, and they did spend a lot of money in him, and they have, sort of supported him through this whole thing. So sending him to Strasbourg would allow them to keep an eye on him, essentially. But he wouldn't necessarily just get straight into the team either, because they've got some good players over in Strasbourg at the moment. There is one other option that's just been announced of the Premier League clubs that are interested in him. That is fascinating. Chelsea Dodgers posted this: Coventry City, who are managed by Frank Lampard, are believed to be among those to have inquired about Mykhailo Mudryk. So, look, love to see it, man. Love to see it. I can't remember who it was, but someone was talking about Mykhailo Mudryk a little while ago. I think it was Frank Lampard, actually, now I say that. He said, because obviously Frank Lampard took over at the end of the Graham Potter season for the interim spell, right? And Frank Lampard afterwards said something about Mykhailo Mudryk in the vein of, he's got the technical ability, but he's never been coached properly. And Frank Lampard was very much of the opinion that there is an amazing player in there, but he needs the right coach in order to bring it out of him. And look, Frank Lampard, good coach, whether it comes down to the technical side or the human side or whatever it is, Frank Lampard is a really good coach, albeit it's taken him a while to get going. So look, Mykhailo Mudryk to Frank Lampard, to me, is pretty much as good as sending him to Strasbourg, because Frank Lampard will always have that connection to Chelsea. He's already shown that he's willing to work with Blueco when he came back and took over for his interim spell at the end of the Graham Potter era. So, and also getting him in the Premier League feels a little bit better, doesn't it? Because Strasbourg, yeah, it's cool. Like, Mamadou Sarr looks wicked out in Strasbourg, but he comes over here and obviously struggles because the physicality is different and stuff. Mykhailo Mudryk's got experience in the Premier League, but not having played for a while. For me, out of everything that I've seen so far, Mudryk to Coventry under Frank Lampard, I think is a good idea if we are able to facilitate that and make it happen. So guys, let me know what you think about the Mudryk situation. I think it's great that loads of teams are in for him, and And I've just genuinely thought since it was announced that he was coming back, it feels like the best thing rather than trying to force him into the Chelsea team. Because you got to think as well, like, as much as I would be really happy for Mykhailo Mudryk to do well, don't get me wrong, we need to kick on. We finished 10th last season. I mean, literally finished 10th last season. And it's so important for us that we kick on under Xabi Alonso. And Xabi Alonso has the team that he wants. So if Xabi Alonso works with Mudryk a little bit over the next few weeks in Asia and is like, yeah, wicked, I'm going to keep him around because I love him, then fine, because that's the decision of the manager at that point. But if Xabi Alonso's like, no, he's not fit, he's been out of the game for a while, he's a little bit rusty, let's go and send him somewhere with a little bit less pressure and, you know, without adding to the burden of needing to get back into the Champions League. Do you know what I mean? Because Mykhailo Mudryk needs space to develop at the moment, or redevelop as it may be. So yeah, for me, Coventry absolutely makes sense. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Right, next up, we're going to talk a little bit about Valentin Barco. So Valentin Barco has been announced for Chelsea. It's taken a long time. And it's interesting though, because unlike the other announcements that we've seen, even the likes of Emmanuel Omega and Giovanni Quenda, no pictures, no interview, no pictures of the kit or whatever. So it's kind of been quiet, and that leads us to start to think, oh, okay, what's going on? So Chelsea Dodgers posted this. Xabi Alonso approved the move for Valentin Barco, who is ready for his Premier League return. So, if you think about Barco at the moment, he's been playing as a midfielder for Strasbourg for the last 12 months, 18 months mainly. When he was at Brighton, he was a left-back, and he did feature on the left for Strasbourg a few times as well. So, we're looking at a midfielder / left-back, which sounds really interesting. Don't get me wrong, as a rotational player, that's cool. But looking at our midfield at the moment, we've got Moises Caicedo for the ball-winning number 6 role. Yeah, cool, perfect. Absolutely brilliant. But his partner is a massive, massive question mark at the moment. And I don't think Enzo Fernandez is that guy. I don't think Xabi Alonso thinks that either. Because if he was, I don't think we'd have put the bid in for Alex Scott or got Jordan Henderson. Dario Esugo seems to be more of the Moises Caicedo type, who needs to develop a little bit more. Romeo Lavia is the profile of player that you're looking for there, but obviously struggling to stay fit. And you can't go into a season being like, right, Romeo Lavia is that guy now, because he hasn't played for us enough and he's just injured all the time. Jordan Henderson, yes, I think will play well in that role when he plays, but I don't expect that to be very often, bearing in mind he'll turn 37 in the next year. And then you've got Valentin Barco. Valentin Barco looks like a phenomenal player. I think so, but is he ready to be the partner for Moises Caicedo? That I'm not 100% sure about, and I've always been honest with that. I always thought if Valentin Barco comes into the squad, it's to be almost like Malagusto was, like, but in a little bit of a different way. Like a Swiss Army player who can dep at left back, he can dep at left wing back, he can dep in the centre of midfield, and in rotational games maybe even play the half space or the number 10, because he's a creative player and he's shown a bit about him in that respect at Strasbourg as well. But what has come out is this. So Chelsea Hub posted this via Cy Phillips, right, from the Cy Phillips Sports Substack. From SPTC sources, stay or loan, Valentin Barco's future is still wide open. Xabi Alonso is set to make the final call on Valentin Barco after assessing him in pre-season, with a loan move still firmly on the table. So, Cy Phillips has done well this summer in terms of the news and being an in-the-know guy. So I think if you just look at what's going on, like the fact that he wasn't announced straight away, the fact that even with his announcement that hasn't come with an interview or pictures or any of the kind of PR or media that the rest of the players have come with, ones that have joined up with the squad. So I think this kind of makes sense, to be honest. Like Xabi Alonso will definitely want to take a look at Valentin Barco. Most recently in the pre-World Cup friendly, he played really well for Argentina to kind of show that he can do it on a big stage. He actually massively outperformed Enzo Fernandez in that game. But at the same time, it's like looking at the squad makeup, like we've obviously still got a lot of players to shift out, and the fact that we went in for a bid for Alex Scott and are potentially still interested in him says to me that maybe Valentin Barco is not going to be the option. You've also got to think of in your head, it's like, well, get rid of Romeo Lavia and keep Valentin Barco around. Romeo Lavia is going to be hard to get a loan out for just because of the injury stuff, right? So potentially there's still an option for Valentin Barco to get loaned somewhere, albeit it did say that Xabi Alonso approved the move in the first place. That does mean he sees something in the player, but if we need to upgrade our midfield, our first team midfield at the moment, then concessions are going to have to be made and someone's going to have to go out. So Valentin Barco will probably attract a lot of Premier League attention, loan attention from Europe and stuff in general, maybe even clubs from Italy. And because he's so young, that would still count as a developmental loan, right? And he could go go out somewhere and get better, and then maybe we see what we do with him in the future. So, guys, Valentin Barco, let me know what you think about him. And just one last post here from Chelsea Dodgers via Kieran Gill. Chelsea's sporting leadership team, led by co-owner Benoit Badiashile and sporting directors Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, have loved working with Xabi Alonso thus far. They have seen his enthusiasm. Look, it's not just the enthusiasm, is it? It's the experience. It's the fact that he's a winner. He's played under some of the biggest and best managers of all time. He's won international competitions. Xabi Alonso is the grown-up in the room, essentially, at the moment. And when I say that, I just mean in terms of, like, understanding the game, right? Like, Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart weren't managers, footballers, whatever it is, do you know what I mean? They've been in and around the business side of the game for a while, absolutely, and, you know, was it both of them from Brighton? I'm not even sure. And, you know, they had some success there with a different kind of model, but Xabi Alonso knows what it takes to win big trophies as a player and as a manager. So, yes, he's going to be enthusiastic about how the squad is built, and he obviously has been getting his say as well. So, look, you know, this is just another small thing to say that Badiashile Bali is obviously open to being a little bit more led by Xabi Alonso in terms of the sporting project, right? So I've mentioned this before. I expect us, maybe not this summer, but going forward, I don't expect us to be constantly going in for 28, 35 and 36-year-olds. I think that's something that we're just going to do to make sure there's some around the team. Maybe when Danny Welbeck and Jordan Henderson move on, we look at replacing them with other players of that ilk, or we've grown our own ones from our team and they've aged on, right? But either way, Xabi Alonso knows what it takes to make the sporting project right, and I still expect Badiashile Bali and the sporting directors to identify young talent, which, to give them their dues, they have been reasonably good at. They've made some mistakes, but I think the biggest mistake hasn't been the talent that they've identified. It's been identifying it and putting it into the sporting project straight away, right? Giovanni Kenda, Esteval Willian, you know, Cole Palmer, like, they've done well to identify some really, really good players. Even the likes of Romeo Lavia, unfortunately, he's been injured a lot, but before that, he looked absolutely phenomenal, and we've seen how good Lavia can be on his day. So I think their talent idea has actually been pretty good for the most part. We've had lots of really good young players come into the squad and get loaned out, and there's been a lot of bad ones as well, but you only need to sell a couple of the good ones to make up the losses for the bad ones. Do you know what I mean? That's just the game. That's just what it is. So I expect these guys to carry on doing that. Maybe not this window, but going forward to still try. And, you know, and there's still talks about expanding the multi-club model, buying other clubs and stuff. You know, that's all still going to grow in the future. But I think what it looks like is happening right now, at least, and we'll see what happens in the future, is they are taking a step back from the immediate sporting project. And like I say, as the manager, they seem to be giving Xabi Alonso the reins to build the squad in a way that is going to be competitive, right? Because it's all fine and good. No one cares if you're making money behind the scenes if you're not winning stuff. Look at Tottenham. Tottenham are minted. Tottenham are not necessarily from buying players and stuff the same way we are, but you look at their business acumen in terms of how they've monetised their stadium, absolutely phenomenal. And Tottenham have been able to spend hundreds of millions of pounds this summer, even though they finished 17th for the last 2 seasons running, and rebuild their sporting project because of the money that they've accrued from all these other things. But do Tottenham fans care? No, of course they don't. Tottenham fans don't care that they make money from go-karts, NFL and concerts. They care that their team is not doing well on the pitch, right? So this is the same sort of thing that we're looking at right now. It's like, we don't really care that we're exploiting loopholes to sell hotels and the women's team to the club, and, you know, we're IDing talent for the future that could make us lots of money and stuff like that. No one cares about that stuff, man, because the team looks dross. So I think the separation of the model into the business side and the sporting project, the immediate Chelsea sporting project, seems to be what's happening right now, and hopefully Xabi Alonso continues to drive it forward. So, nice one, guys. I'm going to wrap the video up there, but I want to know what you think about everything that we've talked about today. Pedro Neto to Man City. I just don't even know, man. I think Man City is such a weird one at the moment because of the 115, and you can see it in their transfer business. They've been kind of moving quite differently to how they usually do. Benoit Badiashile is going to go to a Champions League club somehow. Absolutely wild. Mykhailo Mudryk has got lots of interest from multiple Premier League clubs. Personally, like I say, the Coventry thing, Frank Lampard, Coventry, get Mudryk over there. Absolutely love to see it. What's going to happen with Valentin Barco? Is he going to fight his way into the team and be that rotational player, or do you think he goes out on loan? And finally, The hierarchy love Xabi Alonso, and like I say, I just think it's indicative that even at this early stage, it seems they have learned to start to separate their financial model from the sporting project, and hopefully over time the two can coalesce and be very fruitful on both points. Nice one, guys. Thanks very much for sticking around until the end of the video if you did. Also, if you've made it this far, I hit 5k subs. Yes, you guys are a bunch of legends. Oh man, this journey's been absolutely wild, but I am loving it and I'm not slowing down. We're going to keep on going forwards. Still going to be content every day. Obviously, I've got the Talking Chelsea podcast with Jay from Talking Chelsea, which I'm having a phenomenal time with. It's so much fun. And I've got more collabs coming out soon with creators that we haven't spoken to a while that I'm really looking forward to catching up with. Nice one, guys. I hope you all have an absolutely wicked day and I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.